Hey, I'm going to talk about Neptune and Moon for a second. Uh, I'm just thinking about, it's just coincidental that I'm thinking about water planets. I've been looking at them all year, um, alongside some other planets, but I've been looking at Neptune a lot, and I've been realizing pretty short and simple that it's just, Liz Green refers to it as glamour. I'm not sure. I've seen that word associated with uh, with Alice Bailey as well, and Alice Bailey was an astrologer, so maybe Liz Green is inspired by her, because around Alice Bailey's time was kind of close to when those outer planets were being discovered. Pluto was barely being discovered. Um, I don't even think it was known about before the early 20s. But um, it's about spiritual, connecting to your mindfulness, just like the overall theme of life is. Um, I believe, of course, it starts at ground zero with the moon, which is the quote unquote I am. Uh, I see that next to the Om, the crown chakra. Um, in Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophy, the moon is related to a specific type of Elohim called Yahweh, who was a creator or kind of the overseer of Earth. So there's a few associations there. If you look up the Law of One Ra uh, transcriptions, those are a series of transcripts of a medium who contacted a higher dimensional um, race, that communicated to him, and they also reference Yahweh as a moon, more of as a scientist, a geneticist, which is interesting because you see the helix, the double helix pattern in the DNA, and that's really similar to what the Weaver goddesses represented in mythology, throughout history. So that's where ground zero is. That's where we begin. And I believe, I haven't seen this for years, but I've always remembered it. And it's truer to me now more than ever. I believe that I saw in Manly P. Hall's reincarnational astrology, he referenced something that I had seen before in other, maybe Rudolf Steiner or something. Something about the original first sign of the zodiac being Cancer. So from there, it's just a series of becoming, filling in your shoes, so to speak. Which is why Cancer is the sign of the crab. And if you think about it, it's one of those rare species in the ocean that has a hard shell. It's hard on the outside, soft on the inside. That's a representation of the body manifesting into the soul, I believe. It's hard to say those types of things because it's kind of like a Taurus shape, in that it goes outward at the same time that it goes inward. So it could be the soul becoming the body, you know. One of those micro debates I have with myself. So that's the moon, and when I look at Neptune, I see glamour. As I said, think back to any time, the boys are back. drinking games, smiling faces, um, the end of Goodfellas, um, you know, Derek and the Dominoes, um, the Swingers, everybody's getting together for the party, Vince Vaughn, everybody else, good movie. Just scenes like that. And there's, I think Richard Linklater is a director who's, I think he's a Pisces or a Sagittarius or something. He's really good at doing those types of movies. Just tapping into that soulfulness, the dining with the gods, is what I tend to call it, the champagne glasses. And that's the energy of Neptune. It's the energy, the energizer. I've said it a few times this year. Look at this past month, February 20th to March 20th. It stands out as the only winter month that you feel alive. If you're a gardener, you see people saying it's the right time to garden. It's spring before spring because it's the water sign before the water season. And you can notice how there's actually no water sign in spring. So that's Neptune, and you'll always be able to see it. This is the time of year where the bears come out of their dwellings. People move their feet more. They feel more mobile. That's because of the connection between Jupiter and Pisces. It's a fire planet with a water sign. The closest expression of that would be electricity. You could think tentacle from Pokemon, jellyfish in general, eels. So that's electric fire. I know that Alice Bailey, I think she associates that with the sun, the electric fire. But I see the sun in Pisces as kind of being really the same energy in a sense. Both with the same drives. Just, I think Pisces fulfills it and is conscious of it because of the progress that she goes through in Aquarius. And Aquarius stands out too because that's an air sign with the water heart, maybe, the water soul, which is very interesting. So it's kind of mysterious the way that you look at astrology, and you see that these aren't rigid boundaries. You have water element in air sign, you have water element in earth sign, and it makes sense because we're water bodies, to put it lightly. The other important thing with the moon that's really cool is that it's related to Thoth, Hermes, Trismegistus. So the moon is related to messengers. You find yourself in the Libra predicament throughout your life. The Libra predicament is judgment. You judge things constantly. It's part of how we stay sane. But you notice that your judgments, they come from bias, they come from out there, or they come from approximations. Mirages are a good example of how faulty our judgments are. Arguments that could be solved with reason, things like that. We'll come to head with things because Venus is one of the planets of coming to heads. Look at the Aztecs and what they say about the morning star. They say that it's the planet of war. Because Taurus does have that side to him, and he does butt heads. So an analog of that would be, for example, I ask myself a question. Where am I? Now, is that math? Is that history? Is that philosophy? I have to make that judgment in the first place. Well, I say it's philosophy. No, wait, I say it's math. Okay, so what does 1 plus 2 equal? 3. Does that mean anything to what I am? Maybe, but probably not. So I'm bumping my head up against things trying to figure out the answer. That's a Venus path. And a Virgo path. And you do that enough times, it's exactly like flipping through books trying to find answers. You just can't seem to match the intuition to the action. Then, for example, maybe the sun's in Cancer and it trines your Taurus sun or your Capricorn sun, and the moon is also trining those two energies so that it's a grand trine, and you're in a situation where you realize why the moon is called the messenger, why the moon is related to Gabriel, the archangel, why it's related to Thoth, the magician. Because all of a sudden you'll find yourself in a similar scenario to the Neptune glamour scenario. You'll find yourself in self-discovery. You'll be the baseball player who's looking for one more strike. Walking around the field, twirling his bat around, or one more home run, just daydreaming about the past, about nostalgia. Who am I? Can I do this? How do I do this? The same can be said if you're a researcher flipping through books. Something you read finally clicks with you. And that's the nature of the moon in soft aspect, is that it brings you to that piecing together of information, and that's Thoth, that's Hermes Trismegistus. And that's the energy, that would be one of the highest energies of the moon, next to the realization of your higher self, I think. Which I think is lunisolar. But to me, that's one of the most important things about the moon, is that it pieces together information. It literally feels, and it must be exactly the feeling of a baby, that a baby has when its plates in its head are forming. The soft spot, it comes together eventually. And that's exactly how it feels. For example, like I said, when the moon is trining my moon, I'll feel like I'm coming into myself again, like I'm returning to myself. And all the questions that I have, all the problems that can't be answered, I start to get those. And that's the time when the moon is powerful, that's the time when you're supposed to ask, or you're supposed to direct that type of energy to things that you want to be revealed to you, So there you have it. 2 planets doing 2 things. Kind of the same. Kind of different. Maybe next time I'll talk about Mars.